So you're looking to quickly get smart on something complex, right?
That's the goal.
Today we're diving straight into a head-to-head comparison. Two major fighter jets, the American F-22 Raptor and the Chinese J-20 Mighty Dragon.
A really interesting matchup to look at.
Yeah, we've sifted through textual analysis, expert opinions, that kind of thing to pull out the key differences.
And there are quite a few.
Our mission really is just to understand the core distinctions, their design and what they were actually built for.
Absolutely. And I think what's fascinating to consider right off the bat is the timeline.
Okay.
The J-20, it showed up about 15 years after the F-22?
15 years. Wow.
Yeah, and you can clearly see the principles of stealth design have been incorporated. It looks like a stealth aircraft.
Right. They both have that low observable aspect. But the J-20 seems to borrow a bit visually from another U.S. plane with those angled intakes. Is that right?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, the J-20's intakes, they do look quite a bit like the F-35s.
Yeah.
But, if you dig into its likely origins, the structural foundation, well, it probably owes more to the Russian MiG 1.44 prototype.
Oh, okay. From the 90s.
Exactly. A Russian multi-role fighter project. Had some advanced ideas. So while, it looks a bit like an F-35, its underlying genes, so to speak, seem to lean towards that multi-role concept.
Which is different from the F-22's original idea.
Very different.
Yeah.
That brings us to, I think, a really fundamental point. Their intended roles.
Right.
The F-22 was conceived pretty much as a pure air dominance fighter. Its job was escorting stealth bombers, making sure you own the sky.
Total air control. And the J-20, its purpose seems, quite different based on the analysis.
Exactly. The J-20 appears designed more to carry long-range missiles. Think attacking enemy support ships, maybe naval vessels, in the waters near China.
So less about dogfighting, more about standoff attacks.
That seems to be the implication. And that difference in core mission, it really shapes everything else in the design.
Like how they handle stealth. The sources suggest different priorities there.
Precisely. The J-20's stealth features, they seem really focused on the front aspect.
Okay, why is that?
Well, it makes sense if its strategy is mainly launching missiles from within its own, let's say, sphere of influence, closer to home base.
Right, not necessarily deep penetration missions.
Probably not its main goal. So there seems to be less emphasis on all aspects stealth. Things like perfect trailing edge alignment, or even hiding the heat from the engines, which is crucial for avoiding infrared detection.
I see. So maybe not as critical if you're launching from friendly territory?
That seems to be the rationale. This front-focused approach is logical if, deep strikes into heavily defended airspace aren't the primary mission profile.
Makes sense. And the size difference. That also tells the story, doesn't it? The J-20 is quite a bit larger.
It is, noticeably so. And what's fascinating there are its internal weapons bays.
They're big.
They seem designed specifically to hold very long-range missiles, like the PL-15. An air superiority fighter like the F-22 typically wouldn't need that kind of huge internal space for those specific weapon types.
Okay, so the payload matches that long-range strike role.
It seems to, yes.
Now, we should be clear, there's still quite a bit we don't know for sure about the J-20, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
A lot is still under wraps, or based on analysis rather than confirmed data. A major unknown is, frankly, just how effective its frontal stealth really is.
And the engines. I read something about that.
Right. It's currently using interim engines. Its intended, more powerful production engines apparently aren't ready yet.
So it's likely underpowered right now compared to its final design?
Probably operating with less thrust than ultimately intended, yes. The general assessment, based on what we can see, is that it's likely behind current U.S. 5th-gen fighters like the F-22 and F-35 in overall stealth and maybe avionics.
Okay.
But, and this is important, that assessment likely applies to all other fighter jets worldwide right now. The U.S. had a big head start.
True. We really need operational data for a proper comparison.
Exactly. Real-world performance is the only true test.
And there was that point about the avionics seen in China's export fighters?
Yeah, that's an interesting observation some experts make. The fact that we don't see signs of absolutely world-beating avionics in the fighters China sells abroad. Well, it might suggest that their most advanced cutting-edge domestic technologies, the stuff in the J-20 perhaps, aren't being offered internationally. But that's speculation.
Right, reading the tea leaves a bit. So ultimately it sounds like neither plane would be like the perfect swap for the other country's needs.
That seems fair to say. Exactly. If you connect it to the bigger strategic picture, China's current needs don't necessarily demand penetrating the most heavily defended airspace deep inside another continent, which the F-22 was partly designed for.
And the U.S.
And the U.S. isn't primarily focused on countering large naval formations right off its own coast, in the same way that J-20 seems geared for near China. Different problems, different tools.
Okay, so let's try and sum this up. We've got two advanced stealth fighters.
Yep.
But they come from different timelines, different sort of design philosophies maybe, and definitely different primary missions. Air dominance for the F-22.
Pure air superiority, initially.
And long-range strike, especially maritime strike, perhaps, for the J-20.
That appears to be its focus.
And this difference led to key design choices, how they prioritize stealth, front versus all aspect, the size, the weapons they carry internally.
It all flows from that core purpose. Both use stealth, sure, but why they use it and how seems quite distinct.
What's really fascinating is just how those different strategic needs directly shape these incredibly complex machines.
Absolutely. Form follows function, even at this level.
Which kind of leads to a really interesting question for everyone listening to think about. Given these very different strategic priorities and the aircraft that resulted, how might future aerial combat, potentially evolve or play out for these nations? Something to mull over.
Definitely food for thought.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.